Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
All right, Pete, welcome back.
Ethan?
Another episode of Films and Stuff.
Exactly. I'm very excited.
Tell me, what do we have today?
So, as we previously mentioned, Halo, the venerable and highly respected and highly sought after gaming franchise, previously developed by Bungie, which was owned by Microsoft.
Yes.
And then when Bungie left Microsoft to do their own thing, they were acquired by Activision. Then they left Activision and are now acquired by Sony. But in any case,
Halo is Sony now.
No. So Bungie is Sony. Halo, when
Sony.
Bungie left Microsoft, Microsoft kept the intellectual property rights for Halo.
All right.
And they had a sister studio called, I want to say 343 Industries.
That's correct.
343 Industries was basically a spin-off of Bungie. They had a few of the same developers, and they continued with Microsoft and is an exclusive Microsoft title.
This is the first time that we've seen Halo as a movie or a television series, right?
So there was an animated show, and there was a spin-off, and I can't remember if that animated show was a spin-off or like a companion show to one of the games. There was something about it. I remember there was a lot of fanfare around it. And, maybe I'm remembering this wrong. Maybe I'm confusing it with another game, but I certainly remember there being another adaptation of Halo on screen before. But this is the first time that we're actually seeing Halo, a live action one. And certainly one starring Master Chief, right? Who's the main protagonist of the Halo franchise games.
So to put this in perspective, you've played Halo on Xbox or console, right?
I have, yes.
Yeah. Were you a big into Halo? Halo, when it came out, on the first Xbox, it was everything, right?
Yeah.
It was a game changer.
It was absolutely a game changer. In fact, Halo for me was the first game I ever really played that had, first console game certainly, that had a multiplayer element. And I actually remember when all of us were in university, there were like 3 or 4 of us who had Xboxes. They got together in one small cramped dorm room, connecting each of the Xboxes with the Ethernet ports and playing on a LAN party style game for the first time ever, right? And I'd never done that before because until then, console multiplayer was everyone 2 to 4 players on the same system on the same screen that was split, right? And now you had 2 to 4 players on each console, and you had maybe 3, 4, 5 consoles all hooked up together on 5 different TVs, 6 different TVs. It was really excellent. Yeah.
No fire hazard. No code violations.
And this was, remember, back in the day when TVs weren't like these sexy, slim LCD panels that we have today. They were like those massive CRT.
The cargo container.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where, you literally threw out, you increase the odds of throwing out your back for every additional square inch of space on the TV.
Yeah. So you're talking about playing this in university. Why is it taking so long for Halo to have a franchise? It's still super popular. Why are they so late to the party?
I think there were a lot of problems with the Halo Hollywood element of it. I think there was some people who were previously involved with the show, and there were creative differences and the typical thing. Plus, I think it's also a very hard thing to do until relatively recently, right? Because if you watch that first episode of Halo, you can see that they have blended CGI with live action. And I don't know if that was even going to be technically possible even 15 years ago, right?
Yeah,
it would have been tough. I'm not saying it would have been easy, but it wouldn't have been. It would have been impossible, but I think it would have been really tough. Certainly at the quality that we're seeing it today.
There's just been how many Assassin's Creeds? There's been Mortal Kombat. There's been, even like a Super Mario Brothers and a Sonic the Hedgehog. And I mean, it seems like almost everything that's been, quite popular, except obviously like Fortnite and PUBG, eventually make their way to be, a TV series or a movie. So I'm a little bit surprised that, the Halo franchise, which is really a very, very highly recognizable brand name, even though maybe the gaming numbers are down a little bit, that they haven't done something like this previously.
Yeah, I'm okay, to be honest. I'm okay with it because let's be very frank and let's be very clear. Video game movies.
Let's be clear and frank. Yeah.
Video game movies and TV shows have not had the best history and reputation on screen. That's so true. Much so that I would even go so far as to say some game movies and shows have maybe even set them back, right?
Is that your hot take? Is that your hot take? Already, very early in the show for a hot take.
I don't think the Resident Evil movie franchise did anything positive for the Resident Evil video game franchise.
Yeah, true.
I just don't see it happening. I'm not saying
Resident Evil. I felt like it's actually one of the more popular though, movies, right?
Well, it's one of the maybe not popular, but certainly. Creed. Well, there was the one Assassin's Creed movie, which also did really, really poorly, right? Even though it starred Michael Fassbender. And the Resident Evil franchise, again, the movies they're almost like B movies or modern day B movies now.
Yeah.
Nobody actually watches them because they think they're going to watch an Oscar-worthy performance. They watch them because they want to see zombies and gore, and that's really all you're getting.
So how did Halo end up on Paramount Plus?
That is...
I mean, I guess if it's Microsoft intellectual property, it's probably not going to go to Apple. Okay. I guess so it's not going to go to Amazon. So I don't know who owns HBO, but is Paramount kind of the last streaming
pseudo-independent? No, I mean,
it's not going to go to Netflix. It's not going to go to Disney. Why did Microsoft tie up with Paramount?
I think it comes down to the movie history. I think Paramount had the rights.
Okay.
I think it's as simple as that. I don't know, but my feeling is it's as simple as that because, to be honest, this is something that could have easily come out on Netflix or easily could have come out on Amazon. They both are not shy about spending money. And
I have to say, though, I feel like if it would have come out, maybe we're going to have to start talking substantively about it. We should decide if we're going to have spoilers or not, but I felt that the way that Netflix and Amazon do a lot of their shows, they splash a lot of money on the cast, but they try to make the production value relatively efficient, and Halo, if it's intended to really be true to the original story, probably needs a really big budget on a lot of the backdrop, right?
Yeah.
It's
I
futuristic.
Think
it's high tech, right?
I think this needs foundation-like budgeting and visual appeal because you're talking about aliens, you're talking about space travel, you're talking about, future tech. This is all the kind of stuff that I'm not saying that we've seen on Foundation, absolutely not, but I'm saying the quality that we saw on Foundation is something that you'd want to see in Halo.
Right. I mean, do you think that they made this? I mean, Halo is a very big intellectual property. Is it fair to say that they've done a multi-year commitment to this? I would imagine that they're not doing this just for a 1 year 10 episode run and they're going to say, well, that was that.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like it's got to be like a multi-year commitment, right?
I agree. And maybe, you know what?
Which makes it a little bit easier to spend money.
Yeah, let's drop it now. Let's say spoiler alert now.
Spoiler alert.
Or okay, wait. Even before that, even before we go into spoilers, if you have to review it today, how are you rating this show?
I would say it's mooch. Absolutely not worthy for me to subscribe to Paramount Plus only for this show. I give it a mooch because if we're going to give us spoilers, the end of it kind of got me intrigued. But up until probably that last 90 seconds, I probably would have said it's a pass.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now. Maybe this is the hot take. I think right now
it's getting warm. Let's hear it.
I think right now Halo is a pass based on episode 1.
Yeah.
And again, both of us are going to caveat that we've only seen the first episode. There's still another 9 or maybe 12. I don't know how many episodes there are this season. There's still at least a good 8 hours of story to be seen.
Yeah, but I agree though that it's that first one though that you usually give away for free, and that's the one where you say, "All right, first one's free. Now subscribe to Paramount Plus." And based on that first one, I'm not there.
I'm not there.
Although I do have Paramount Plus.
I'm not there for this, and honestly, it got to a point where I was not watching the show for anything more than like Easter eggs based on the video games. And then and then I immediately sent you a message and say, "Hey, you should watch this. Let's talk about it."
Kudos to you for pointing it out. Yeah.
But I think that, for me, based on episode 1, the films and stuff review by Pete Mitchell is skip it. Let's touch base on it next week. Let's see how things go over the course. No, I'm going to watch it. I'm dedicated to watch it for the rest of the season because I am a Halo game fan. And I do want to see how things go.
It's what we do, Pete. It's what we do. This is
it's a heavy burden to wear.
The sacrifices we make for our listeners. Yeah. A heavy crown to wear. Can I make 2 observations? And you tell me if you agree or disagree with these observations. Yeah. Observation number 1. Although the plot was can I call it an outfit or the costume or the armor? Mm-hmm. I thought was A+.
Yes. I 100% agree. Chef's Kiss. Yeah. It looked fantastic. And not just on Halo, not just on Master Chief. The actual, they show you, again, so now we're getting more into spoiler territory. We actually get to see other Spartans suit up in their suits of armor. And the way they do it, it invoked, the Vitruvian men of Leonardo.
Yeah.
Right? How they've got these like mini rings. They stand in the center and the armor gets clamped around them. It's a little bit Iron Man-esque.
Iron Man. I was going to say it was a little bit Iron Man / I felt like there's something in one of the Matrix movies where they got into these like walking things as well.
If you remember the 80s era cartoons, it very much reminded me of the Centurions. And this is a deep cut. But
I'm there.
If anyone remembers, that's what it evoked. Anyway, so yes.
But we agree. The armor, as you said, I give it A+, you give it Chef's Kiss. We agree. The armor, very well done. Yeah. If this show fails, it's not because of whoever was responsible for designing the armor.
Agreed.
Very well done.
Agreed.
My observation number 2 is that if I were just listening to this and not watching it, it's a lot like Mandalorian in terms of pace and in terms of this gruff assassin meeting a young person and having kind of a soft spot in their heart for it, right?
It is so funny you mentioned that because my first instinct was Mandalorian when I saw this. And there's a couple of points of difference that I wanted to go over.
Yeah.
The first major point was like, oh man, this is like, are they trying? And I know that they weren't trying to copy because this was probably in production while Mandalorian was also in production.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think that they would have taken one and copied from the other. I just, the timing's
a lot of
too
differences.
Close. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think practically speaking,
on its face.
100%, I couldn't help but feel like this was totally a Mandalorian-esque situation where you had this strong but silent type protagonist.
Assassin,
and he doesn't say much, but he really gets shit done.
Even so far as the covered face right? I mean,
yeah,
Mandalorian.
so again, spoiler alert. Now we're going to get into this. This is the problem I had with the episode, right? In The Mandalorian, you had payoff, right? You never see him remove his helmet ever. And then you see him remove it 3 times over 2 seasons, right?
Yeah.
The first is because he's massively injured at the end of season 1. And he only reveals his face to a droid, so it doesn't count theoretically against the Creed, right?
Correct.
And in the second season, you see him remove his helmet twice. You see him once when he's forced to because he has to complete the mission in the Rebel base. Not the Rebel base. Yeah. Sorry, the old Imperial base.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
When he's with Briggs.
I can't remember those guys.
Bill Burr's character, Briggs Mayfeld or something like that.
Right.
And the third time is at the very end, which is a very emotional scene, is when he removes his helmet voluntarily so that Grogu can see his face one time before he leaves forever, right? Or what he thought was forever. So it was a very emotional thing. It was very well done. Yeah. There was a lot of payoff to that, right? Because the whole time we've been watching, the idea was, I never take off my helmet. It is a part of my creed. And it was a plot point.
Yep. This is the way.
And Halo came out, I think the game came out in like the early 2000s. We're looking like 2001, 2, 3. Yeah, it launched with the first original Xbox. So between 2002 and 2004, whenever that was.
Mm-hmm.
The point was, in the video games, we have never, up to date, in the 7, 8 games that have been out, we have never seen Master Chief's face. He's never taken off his helmet, right? And he is this godlike, mythical human being amongst the naval, or amongst the Earth's forces, because
UNSC.
He never takes his helmet off. You never get to see it. And here, he takes it off almost immediately at the end of the first episode. And
he's not saving himself for marriage, right? He gave it up in the first episode.
And I get it. You're not the Mandalorian. I get it. There's no creed. There's no reason why you couldn't take off your helmet. But my God, man, save the reveal.
I mean, do you think that was inspired by the Mandalorian, where they're kind of like, you know what? Everyone's kind of seen this. Let's not try to recreate the same magic. Let's just get it out of the way. Do you think that was some influence from the Mandalorian?
I don't know, and I hope not, first of all. Second of all, again, this is the problem with games or shows based on games or movies based on games, right?
Yeah.
When you have 20 years of lore and history behind a franchise, and you've created a show which will appeal to a massive number of fans, you can't at the same time crap all over that history because for the sake of being different, right? So when I saw that helmet thing come off, first of all, my instant reaction was, what the heck is going on, right? And of course, family-friendly heck. I was really dropping F-bombs left, right, and center. I was not happy about that reveal, right? Second of all, I immediately went to the first question I typed into Google was, is the Halo show canon to the Halo games, right? Do they run parallel? Are they inspired by? Where are we in terms of the timeline? And apparently, from what I read, and please, if I'm wrong, readers, listeners, whoever you are, send us messages. I'm very interested in knowing more about this. From my understanding, the Halo show is a parallel, almost like a parallel timeline to the Halo video games. And the idea is that it borrows and takes liberally from the video games, but it runs its own course. So it's canon insofar as it takes pieces and lore from the video games. But at the same time, from what I understood, it's not canon in the sense that they're not trying to recreate the stories of the games onto the show. So, which I like. I don't want to retread because, you've got lots of games that you can go back and see the story through. But at the same time, like, that comes dangerously close to the director and to the writers saying, well, I'm going to take a giant steaming turd on top of this beloved franchise because I want to differentiate myself. Only for the sake of wanting to differentiate myself.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I guess I didn't have a strong opinion about the removal of the helmet. But I mean, I agreed the parallels, that I saw with Mandalorian were just so strong. The fact that he took it off right away, I had to immediately compare it with how Pablo Pascal,
right.
Held off, really until, the last moment again with this emotional goodbye to Grogu, right?
Right. Right.
I think, as you mentioned, the first 2 times he took it off, it was somewhat justified, and he could say kind of with plausible deniability, that he still kind of, kept his oath.
Yeah, I think.
But maybe Master Chief doesn't have the same thing. But as soon as he took it off, I was just like, well, all right, here we go. This is it. We're gonna have a series where he's gonna show his face quite a bit.
Yeah. And again, I get it. It's necessary because you don't also want to have your lead actor behind a helmet the entire time, right? And as much as I love Halo, the reality is that Star Wars as a franchise is so powerful, it can afford to put famous faces behind the screen, behind a helmet for the entire series and still be a massive success for that star, right? So we're not super concerned about seeing Pedro Pascal's face when we see him in that suit of armor because we know what we know the implication of that armor is. So the way I'm looking at the show, I expect that, and the way he's been portrayed in the games, Master Chief is very much like a combination in this show of the Mandalorian and Jack Reacher. And by that, I mean the Jack Reacher from the new Amazon series, not Jack Reacher from Tom Cruise's 2 movie adaptations, which is to say he's very efficient. He's very, stoic. He doesn't say much. He doesn't show any emotions, but he's very skilled at his job, whatever that is, right? And in this case, we saw that where a team of 4 Spartans were able to basically take out an entire platoon of aliens in the first episode, The Covenant.
What did you think? Can I just ask and interrupt? What did you think of that action sequence? Because my read was that they really jumped into the fight fast, right?
Yeah.
And my sense was that this was supposed to be, the hook. This was supposed to be an action sequence that got us all hooked. We're like, wow, that was so cool. The Spartans, the aliens, I thought that was a tame, I guess is the best word I can come up with. I mean, that was kind of the minimum I would expect if there's a alien Spartan shootout, right?
Yeah, it was definitely their flagship battle, and you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. I think that was the intention of that fight sequence, right? Was to say, we're here, and this is a statement that we're here. We're back on TV. Yeah. We're finally on TV, and we're going to kick some ass. And we want to show you how powerful these guys are, right? You saw that point where he picks up the alien, the Covenant on the pole, on the spear, right? Exactly.
Yeah. And there was a lot of sliding and some, you could say light martial arts, So, I could see what they wanted to do. And I'm not a fight choreographer, so for sure I could not do better. But I didn't really feel like that was super compelling fight. I didn't find that the aliens were really intimidating and strong. I didn't find that any of the, the weapons were super powerful or interesting. A bunch of kind of swords and bullet guns. And I didn't find that the Spartans kind of really did anything that made them stand out. Although, as I mentioned, their armor I thought was super cool. The way that they run is super cool. I thought that was pretty cool. But it just seemed like, you introduced me to the term set piece a while ago. To me, that just seemed like a set piece. There was nothing that really kind of like explained it all. Like how this thing like just kind of happened so quickly, right? Okay, where did the aliens come from and why? And where did the Spartans come from and how did they get there? And like, it just seemed to be, kind of manufactured like really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's because, you and I are or maybe we're a bit jaded, and maybe
we're jaded.
It could also be that, frankly speaking, if you look at shows like Reacher, if you look at shows like Mandalorian, we've seen some really killer action sequences, right?
I mean, I think that's the thing. I mean, it's Halo. It's the premiere. I don't think that I'm being unreasonable by saying, Microsoft and Paramount Plus, show me something that's really bloody cool.
Right.
Like
show me the Lamborghini of fight scenes, right? I want to see the best.
Yeah. I mean, this is, you want to hook me, but I mean, I have to say, like, that was pretty, all right. Golf clap for Paramount Plus. You make movies for a living, action movies for a living. I kind of felt like they just did the old copy and paste of something else that they've done in the past. And I was not really at all like compelled by it. Yeah. And that's disappointing because I wanted to be.
Yeah, I think they could have done more with it. I agree. And please don't hold me to that in the sense that we are not fight choreographers, right? But I just feel like it felt a little, I don't want to say underwhelming, but it certainly wasn't overwhelming. It was just whelming.
Yeah. It was just whelming.
Right? It was just...
like I said, just kind of what you'd expect from Paramount Plus and Microsoft and Halo. Like, okay, golf clap, well played.
Yeah, but you'd hope for
Move
more.
On.
You'd expect a little bit more, only because, in the games you only ever really play as Master Chief on his own, right? It's always a one-man army thing, and here you've got a squad of 4 of them.
Yeah.
You'd hope that there would have been a little bit more interaction rather than one sniper on Overwatch who's sniping every once in a blue moon. I don't know. It just felt, it was fine.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
Again, not a knock against it, but certainly not something that's in favor of it either.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really hoping there's 9 episodes. I mean, they've made 9 episodes. Only the first one is released.
Okay.
I mean, it's not absurd to believe that by the end of the 9th, we're going to be just totally hooked. It's not that weird to assume that. But the problem for me is that the first one should have been the hook. The first one should be the best one. This isn't like some sitcom pilot where you're trying to kind of figure it out as you go. Who's the funny one? Who's the handsome one? Who's the quirky one? Like, you've already got the roles of everyone. You've got kind of a general storyline to follow. Like, all this should have been worked out, and you should have been focused on having some really cool stuff there.
Yeah, I agree. And again, your point comes out of the fact that if you're making a movie or a show based on a video game, do you want to retread the base information that everybody already knows from the video game? Or do you want to just assume that we're going to make this as if everyone knows, and those that don't, we'll get them on board eventually. I think in that first episode, as you rightly pointed out, you don't want to waste time with...
Yeah, you got to pick an audience, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think they did here. They were at half of it was them trying to explain the lore to people who have never heard of Halo, and half of it was them trying to prove how badass Master Chief is based on the video game. Let's take a moment to hear from our friends at Nerds Talking.
Hello, this is Lafayette.
And I'm Carlos.
From Nerds Talking the Podcast.
That's right.
Where we talk about everything from UFOs, comic books, movies, streaming services, conspiracy theories, ghosts, video games, and more.
Kick-ass.
All on Nerds Talking the Podcast.
You can find us every Friday with new episodes on all digital platforms where you find your favorite podcast, Nerds Talking the Podcast.
Now back to the show.
And now we return to our episode.
What would you choose? I mean, if you're making this and they said, okay, like, Pete, like, which direction do you want to take this? You want this to appeal to the hardcore Halo gamers, or you want this to appeal to kind of the new generation that's kind of heard of Halo? They don't really know what's going on. Well, how do you position it?
So remember, we talked about this, I don't remember when, maybe when we reviewed Uncharted. But I think one of the things that it's important to do, or one of the things that you can do with movies and TV shows, is use them as bridges in between video games, right? Or between things, so that you can use, if you have one defined story or like universe, there's no point in doubling up, right? There's no point in showing a story in the video game franchise and then repeating that story on the movie franchise, trying to appeal to a bigger audience. There's just no point.
Yeah.
Or I think for me, what I would have done is gone even further back in time. This seems to be like the beginning of the Halo franchise, right? Which is to say, we know of John 117, Master Chief, but not really. There's still something. Whereas in the video games right now, that guy, he's like a legend, right?
Yeah.
I would have gone a little bit further, and I would have said, you know what, maybe you do is set the show in the past, like well in the past. Don't make it starring the Master Chief. Make it starring Dr. Halsey, who's the one who created the Spartans, right? And showcase that process, right? How she's kidnapping these children, replacing them with clones. How those clones are dying off because that was what they're engineered to do, so that nobody will look for those kids. And then how they're doing these genetic experimentation on the kids to make them Spartans, right? That I think would have been more interesting, because in the video games, we've seen clips and audio logs and bits and pieces of it, but obviously, that's not fun gameplay. So we know the lore based on external facts. We don't know, or not intrinsic, extrinsic facts. So I think that you would do the fans a better service is to say, spend the first season building up the lore of what Spartans are and why they're so important or why they're so hated, etc. And then maybe, because as you rightly pointed out, this is going to be a multi-season franchise, because no one's spending this kind of money just for 10 episodes and then calling it a day. Spend the next 2-3 seasons after that showing the Spartans, and again, probably not Master Chief, but companions to Master Chief that have kind of shown up in the video games for like 5-10 minutes and then left, so that you can get a better idea of the world.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I'm kind of expecting, as with all new series, eventually they do some flashbacks and show kind of the the genesis of a lot of characters and how they arrived here. And I think that we've seen at least enough, let's say, hints that that's going to be, somehow incorporated in here as well. But I agree. I mean, it wasn't part of the first episode, and maybe that's the right thing to do. But I mean, again, this episode just could have used a little bit of, Red Bull or something to make it like a little bit more appealing to me.
I agree.
That being said, like you said, Pete, I mean, we don't think that this is worth subscribing to Paramount Plus for it. But I mean, again, I'm not cutting it off. I'll watch the second episode, but I have to say that second episode really has to show me a little bit of something. Otherwise, I feel like there's just so much other stuff competing for my attention that it's really hard to go back to something that I'm not really, enamored with, unless you and I just decide that we're gonna knock it out for our listeners and we'll just power through it,
Yeah.
But that's professional obligation. That's not, personal interest.
Yeah. I will say I liked that they had a few small Easter eggs. You saw the sound.
Oh, what?
So, there was that scene where Master Chief gets shot and you hear his shield go down. And so the sound effects they used are exact, and then the shield recharges, and it's the same sound effects that you hear in the video games. So a nice little.
I did not pick up on that.
So that's a nice little throwback there. And well, the only reason I know that very clearly is because I'm so bad at the multiplayer. I keep losing my shields. Yeah, exactly. So
some of the other listeners like, oh, that never happened to me.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, so there was that, and then you see when the Covenant is escaping after that first fight sequence, you see him using the cloaking shield.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah,
and that was straight out of the games too, the active camo.
Yeah.
Then there was one other one that I caught. I don't know if it's a reference to Mass Effect, but there was a nod to a Commander Shepard on one of the screens. And Commander Shepard is the main protagonist of the Mass Effect video game series. So I don't know if that was an Easter egg or just a random coincidence. But I hope that it's an Easter egg just because
I feel it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were little bits and pieces there like that. I will say I do like that the show is leaning heavy into the lore of the games, right? So you see Halsey, you see you see bits and pieces of all the different work that she's doing and the factions even within the UNSC. So I like that. I do like that. I think that there's that's something. That's a storyline that certainly was prevalent in the game, or not prevalent, but maybe pervasive in the games.
So this is coming out once a week by Paramount Plus, right?
Yes, it appears so.
All right. I mean, of course, according to IMDb, they've already got 9 episodes.
Okay.
So I guess we've got another 8 weeks to go. What do you think of the release timing of this? I mean, we're in end of March now. Is that curious that they didn't, speed it up by a couple weeks? Is it okay? And they're trying to catch that April, May lull when we've described that there's not a lot coming out. What do you think is the reason for the timing of this? Or is it just whenever it was ready, they pushed it?
So I think in terms of timing, this is probably a good place because, again, there's a little bit of a lull, especially in the cinema. We're not really seeing any major summer blockbuster hits so early yet, although I know that there are a couple of movie releases that we want to see in April. But having said that, I think that the other element to take into account is if you look at the video game release schedule, there is almost nothing major left, or at least anything announced for the next at least 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think what this allows Microsoft to do for the next 2 months, assuming that the show is a success, or at least well liked by the gaming fans, I think what that allows Paramount and Microsoft to do is keep the video game Halo Infinite alive and relevant in gamers' mindsets. My feeling is that in terms of timeline, if you now have a weekly show for the next 2 months about Halo, you're probably going to see an uptick, especially if the show has some cool sequences and good drama. I think you're hoping to see some uptake in the numbers for people playing the video game as well.
I think that's right.
Right.
Okay, good point. I feel like this could have come out. I mean, I think that the lull that you refer to, this could have come out 2 weeks earlier, and I think it also would have really satisfied the lull. I mean, I'm happy it came out when it did. I was looking forward to something new, but I mean, definitely, I think that they could have, done this 2 weeks earlier, and it wouldn't have been competing with really anything out there.
And even if it were, right, I think it would have also kind of been less jarring to see how generic or blah this show is so far. So, and again,
sorry, Paramount. Sorry, Master Chief.
Yeah, I mean, look, I say this out of a place of love. I really do like the franchise. I think there's a lot that they can do with it.
What do you think of Pablo Schreiber? Do you like him though? I mean, I didn't know that was going to be who played Master Chief. What do you think of the casting choice?
No issues there. I don't know because again, we've never really seen Master Chief. We've never seen his face ever. So it could have been anyone for all I care, and that's fine. He seems like a handsome young man. fine. There are rumors I read this morning. Hilariously enough, there are rumors flying around that he could be the next Wolverine in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, really?
It could be Wolverine, but he didn't say, but it just came out in an interview that he's been talking, or he's been in talks with Marvel for some role in the MCU. And I don't know much about this actor, but everyone seems to be saying that, well, it only makes sense if he comes in as the Wolverine. Which, I guess, I mean, I don't know.
I just remember him from American Gods, which is several years old now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he was, like, extremely compelling there. And then there was something else I saw him in.
He was
Defending Jacob. Defending Jacob.
In American Gods, he was which demigod? Or
Mad
god?
Sweeney.
Oh, he was Mad Sweeney. Okay, he was the Irish guy.
He was like this Irish leprechaun guy. Yeah.
The one with the lucky coin.
Yes, the lucky coin.
Yeah.
And then Defending Jacob, he was the district attorney, right? He was amazing in that, by the way. I don't know if you saw that. That's not. I feel like that's less your style and more my style.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing Defending Jacob. But yeah, I think in terms of size and in terms of physicality, he certainly, based on Mad Sweeney alone, I think he certainly fits the mold for Master Chief.
Yeah.
I don't know if he fits the mold for Wolverine, but hey, what do I know? So yeah, that's a quick take on
episode 1.
Episode 1. Not much in terms of story to tell or to recap. It's so generic right now still. If you really, as Ethan rightly pointed out, really look at The Mandalorian to see kind of where they're going in terms of at least
right now.
At least after episode 1. And, you know, that's why I'm really meh about it. And if you pressed me on giving a review based on episode 1, I'd say, you know what? Skip it. Don't let this show mar your enjoyment of the video games. But I'm
save yourself.
But I am
save yourself score.
I am eternally optimistic, and I do hope that rating changes from skip
I think that's hope
to a mooch
I think that's hope speaking.
To a subscribe.
To a subscribe. What do we have in our next episode? Let's do a quick teaser. What's the next thing we're talking about on films and stuff?
So we are going to be talking about. Likely we're going
Winning Time.
Yep.
Winning Time.
The latest episode of Winning Time. And we will also be doing our
Q1
recap.
Yep.
Our 10K for the year 2021, which is to say our financial reporting / critical reporting of the year of the cinema and streaming platforms of 2021. And the 10Q, or the first quarter of 2022.
All right.
Perfect.
Let's start to audit ourselves.
Indeed. We'll get those numbers audited by Booz Hamilton and Ernst & Young or whoever. I don't know.
Maybe Arthur Anderson, given our scores.
Oh, maybe.
Pete, always a pleasure. I will catch you on the flip side when we talk about Winning Time.
You got it. Talk soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.